Welcome to American Players Theater Talkbacks to Go. I'm Buzz Kemper, and I invite you to take a walk to the Touchstone Theater with Orange Schroeder and me as Orange talks with director Ameenah Kaplan and actor Nate Berger about APT's 2018 production of Our Country's Good by Timberlake Wertenbaker.
We're talking about Our Country's Good by Timberlake Wertenbaker, and this is based on Thomas Keanley's novel, The Playmaker. I'm fortunate to have with me the director, Ameenah Kaplan, and Second Lieutenant Ralph Clark, Nate Berger, who plays Captain Plume in The Recruiting Officer, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. The author of Our Country's Good is not very well known. She's a British-based playwright who was born in New York, grew up in a small fishing village in France, and so she has quite an international background. And I wanted to ask, to start out with, how her background in so many different countries might be reflected in the theme of displacement in Our Country's Good.
Oh, yeah, what a great question to start with. I think her diverse background is everything, honestly. The characters in the play are so different, and they are from all over the world. There's people from Africa, there are people from Aboriginals from Australia, and then there are people from Britain, and then there's a whole class structure that's happening in the play. And I think Timberlake's international experience is the only way that could have come about. Of course, without some research, but it does feel like a very personal play, like the people are very real.
And Second Lieutenant Ralph Clark was a real person who staged the recruiting officer in the penal colony of New South Wales in 1788. And the title of the novel that it's based on is The Playmaker. So your character, Nate, is the playmaker, and he inspired the play. What can you tell us about him?
About the real Ralph Clark?
Well, or the character.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think that just speaks to process a little bit, because I know he was born in the mid 1750s, the real guy, and he fought in the American Revolutionary War and was kind of stationed a bunch of different places and then volunteered to come to Australia. And the only real thing that we have that's his is he wrote these 3 journals, and one is missing. And some of them are used in the play. But I didn't do a ton of research about the historical Ralph because it's not super helpful to me. Because I think, how I tend to process information, I like to know about the world. So I read a lot of this book, The Fatal Shore by Robert Hughes, which is about the founding of Australia and sets the stage for what the environment was like, what the world was like when all these people came to Botany Bay and Sydney Cove. And the actual Ralph, his stuff is, the thing that I have to build is the guy that's on the page. And so the one that we're given is a man who is deeply in his faith, I think. He's sort of an ambitious blank slate. He's looking for advancement, sort of at any turn. He is a married man who's trying to hold on to a life that he may have left behind for good. And so he's trying to reconcile this new place and the opportunity for newness against holding on to the stuff that he feels as a Christian man he should hold on to. So I think that's the stuff that is really interesting to me, is the Ralph that's on the page. And some of his journals are pretty funny. There's a bit where he's talking about Major Ross, who is sort of, for all intents and purposes, the villain in the play. And the real Ralph Clark says something like, I don't think Major Ross is a very intelligent man, but he is honest. And I was like, huh.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think he's an interesting guy. I like playing him up against Plume, too. It's very different.
Yeah. Can I just speak to what Nate just said? Because I really very much agree. I think a lot of people have different processes, but I really vibe with Nate's process because to me, the play is a living thing. And I'm so glad that that's the way he's seeing Ralph, because it's enabled us to really find new stuff. an extension of the historical figure. Also, there are other characters in the play that needed a newer life to them because we're doing the play in 2018. And by thinking of it as what's on the page and extrapolating outward from what's on the page, we were able to really find some cool moments. And I think we found some really interesting stuff for Ralph as well, and the John Caesar character in the play, and the Aboriginal character in the play, and the Wisehammer character in the play, because we're interracially cast, and so that brought all kinds of new dynamics to the room. And so I just wanted to co-sign what Nate was saying.
And are you setting it in a historic period? I mean,
Yes.
authentic. It's not being updated at all.
No. The characters we're being, in my opinion, true to Timberlake's script. We are a multicultural nation in 2018, and so honestly, it's difficult to do a play without sort of intercasting things. That's what we're interested in as a society, is getting to know each other. But I think that our intercasting and setting it back in, when it took place, is a metaphor for our society now. It's we are all in this big melting pot trying to figure out how to craft a society that works. And that theme is still prevalent.
Yeah, there's that bit. One of my favorite lines in the play is Wisehammer says, I don't want to go back to England now, because here no one has any more right than anyone else to call you a foreigner. Mm-hmm. And I think the way we've cast it with all these different kinds of people, different ethnicities and backgrounds, speaks to the disparate nature of those people forming a new country, mm-hmm. forming that Australia, and really trying to build something cohesive out of a melange of different kinds of people.
Cultures, yeah.
Different cultures.
It feels very right.
Yeah, I think so.
It feels like we're in the right room at the right time.
And the play isn't that old. It was written
from the 80s.
About 10 years ago, or?
In the 80s.
In the 80s.
Yeah, I want to
Okay.
say 88. Yeah, I
Something
could be
like that.
wrong about that, but I think it's 88. Yeah.
Okay. And it's often said that Our Country's Good is largely about the power of theater. Do you both want to talk about that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, go.
I think we can both wax poetically. I'll take 15 seconds. You take 15.
Cool.
Yes, absolutely. The theater has been transformative in my personal life. I was supposed to be a lawyer who ran track on a track scholarship and became a lawyer, and here I am, this sort of bow-legged choreographer, director person. And so the theater was where I went to kind of save myself, and it's doing that for me right now. It's totally providing a place for me to heal and become whole and to express my creativity and my humanity. And I think that all of that are the themes of the play.
Yeah, I think, sorry, sometimes I just what do I actually think? I think that what's great about, it's about the power of theater, but I think it's sort of about the power of art generally it's the missing ingredient. They're trying to build a town, and they're trying to build a city, and then they're trying to build a country in this blank slate, arid desert of a place. And they're we have food, water, shelter, and then what's missing is culture. And that's Captain Phillip, who is the governor-in-chief of New South Wales, is talking about trying to build a civilization. And he's really interesting. He's Ulysses. He was I was farming, and then they brought me back into the army and asked me to do this. But I think it's the thing that makes us, it's the glue. It's what makes all those disparate people find a voice together and build something that becomes theirs, is art. And it just happens to be theater, and for some reason it's the recruiting officer. But it's because they only had 2 plays on the ship. Apparently, they had the recruiting officer and the tragedy of Lady Jane Grey.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's pretty lovely.
And Ameenah, you just touched a little bit on how you got to where you are in theater today, but we remember your work last year as choreographer on Midsummer Night's Dream, which was just amazing. And you're also a filmmaker and a percussionist. Can you talk a little bit about whether that influences what you do with Our Country's Good?
I think every part of my artistic experience informs what I'm doing in the present, for sure. I'm a physical person, so I'm leaning into, the transitions and the beauty of them and sort of the, for lack of a better word, choreography of them. And blocking to me is choreography, even though it's pedestrian. Sometimes I'm talking in dance terms. And I do it on purpose. It is my world, but also I want the actors to think of themselves as moving instruments, and that their bodies are their instrument as well as their voice and their mind, and that their body also is helping to tell that story. The diversity of my background just comes mostly because I'm just have a lot of energy, I guess, and I just get bored easily. I don't know. And I just really don't like waiting tables. And so when I wasn't able to be an actor in LA, or if things were slow, I played drums. And when I wanted to stay connected to theater but couldn't make a living in theater as an actor, I choreographed for theater in LA. Oh. So and worked in television. So it's just it was a thing of necessity, honestly. Like, I'm determined to be an artist and make my way as an artist, and that means I'm somewhat nomadic and just willing to sacrifice for what I'm doing. I don't want to sound noble. It's not noble, but it's just
it's important.
Yeah, I just really don't like waiting tables. So
the restaurant's loss is our gain.
Yeah, they don't like me either, by the way. No one ever hired me.
So APT is also doing The Recruiting Officer this season, which I had the privilege of seeing last night. What parallels will people see in the two productions?
There's a lot. I mean, there's some of the text is in it, and it's really funny. We were talking about it last night because we had a talk back for The Recruiting Officer, and Kelsey was talking about Kelsey, who plays Sylvia in The Recruiting Officer, plays Liz in Our Country's Good, who in Our Country's Good plays Melinda, another character in The Recruiting Officer. Sorry if that was confusing, but she was talking about it's interesting because I'm not trying to give Andrea line readings or anything, but I mean, there's some of that text in there, and it's interesting how it takes on different life for these people who are in a really intense, oppressed situation, and it becomes some of the lines that seem a little pedestrian in Recruiting Officer, or are about something like these people's relationship, are about freedom.
So it's not cast with the same same actors playing the same characters?
Not all the way through. I play the character who plays Plume. Juan Rivera-Lebrun plays the character who plays Worthy, which is who he plays. And Christina Panfilio plays the character who plays Rose. But everyone else is mixed up.
And was that intentional?
I think it was just a factor of the casting, the way that we had to do it for Our Country's Good. We had 10 actors to play some 25 parts or whatever, or 30 parts. I don't know how many it is. So I think it was just a necessity. It necessitated that. But I love the cross-pollination and the way it's making us think of the play. And again, co-signing what Nate says, it's we are pulling new meaning out of some of the text of The Recruiting Officer because we have different people saying it who have different intentions. So when Brian at the end is playing Kite, he's a bad actor. He's not like some great actor who was in The Recruiting Officer, so he's able to kind of play with that a little bit more.
And this is also one of APT's first plays by a woman playwright, which...
okay.
Oh my God, is it really? We did Eurydice.
It's not the first one, but there are not many. And I know that the playwright herself has found it frustrating to have her work produced. So it's wonderful that APT is making a point, I think, of doing this.
The times they are a-changing.
And that's a good thing. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talkbacks to Go is a production of Orange Tree Imports and Audio for the Arts. Our theme music is by Steve Tibbetts, and it appears here by permission of the artist, courtesy of ECM Records. Please find us on iTunes and YouTube under APT Talkbacks to Go. With Oren Schroeder, I'm Buzz Kemper. Thank you for listening.